Dr. Terry Smith from the FIA Foundation. He's the technical helmet expert, and he's also the principal scientist at Galeatus. I hope I'm not massacring that name. So he'll be conducting an interactive session with practical demonstrations about certified helmets. He'll be taking apart helmets, showing us the interior, showing us exactly what to look for when we are identifying a certified helmet. And I just ask that you put your hands together to welcome Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Sidonie. It's a pleasure to be able to come and talk to everybody today. And it's been a great visit. This is my second visit here to Jamaica. I love coming back here and working with everybody. People so involved in helmets and helmet safety. My name, as I say, is Terry Smith. I'm originally from Canada. I am a motorcycle rider, and I have a lot of different helmets. But today, I am offering what we call my Helmets 101 lecture. So I regret I can't give you credits at the University of Technology, but my goal today, as Sidonie pointed out at the beginning of this workshop, is to give you all the tools necessary to be able to identify certified and uncertified motorcycle helmets. Because at the end of this presentation, I'm going to have a request, because part of the work that we do and that I do is turning you into a helmet expert, and then part of your job is to communicate that information to the rest of your community. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that near the end of my presentation. But if I could get the next slide. In order for us to really understand what a helmet is, we've got to talk about the components that go into a helmet. So I'm going to be talking about that. Next slide. Click. And how it works out in the field. We heard a little bit about a cautionary tale and how they work. Next slide. It's actually click, I guess. So, yeah, PowerPoint. My wife says I'm very old with these PowerPoints, so I have to upgrade it. But so why are standards important? Click. What we need to look for in a certified helmet, that's what we're going to be focusing on. And next, click. And lastly, we're going to talk about how to properly fit a helmet. So, components that go into a helmet, and this is all part of interaction. Remember, we're talking about a shell, which covers and protects the head, and it also covers a material called EPS, or expanded polystyrene. That is the thing that does all the work in the helmet. It protects you, it prevents an impact and absorbs that impact energy. Third component, which is often forgot by many riders, is the retention system. The retention system is critical in the design of a helmet, because if you imagine the forces that are going on in a crash, they're rapid, they occur in a blink of an eye, and they are extremely high. And a helmet has to remain on your head if it's going to be effective. Okay? Next slide. So how does that helmet work? Well, this is the beauty of it. And usually in my presentations, I have to wave my hands and talk about how helmets work and how a helmet distributes the forces over the surface of the helmet, and it crushes to absorb impact energy. However, today, I have two success stories from Jamaica that I get to share with you. Hopefully you can hear me. So, two stories from our friends. Let's start with that one. They are good stories because these are examples of how helmets work. I have had the fortunate luck to be able to speak to both of them. So they are both functioning. One is still recovering from his crash. But the key thing is we understand what the helmet did. So this is Rodney's helmet. Rodney, yes, question? Need some light. Maybe I'll stand under the light. Light above. Okay. So he was traveling on the road, and it had just rained, as it does sometimes in Jamaica. He unfortunately dropped into a pothole on his motorcycle and lost control of the motorcycle. The motorcycle capsized. He traveled into the oncoming lane and came head to head with a van traveling the other way at 60 to 70 kilometers per hour. He was wearing this certified motorcycle helmet. And we're going to be talking about certified helmets and how certified helmets work. So I want to show you, and I'm going to pass this around for everybody. Remember what my slide says. A helmet distributes the force around the helmet and absorbs energy. You can look at the chin bar. His chin bar includes this expanded polystyrene foam. Certified helmets include expanded polystyrene in the chin bar. And you can see a significant impact here. You can see significant crushing of the energy absorbing liner. One of the other things, as you're looking, and hopefully you can get the light just right. We might have to turn the room lights up. But you can actually see the imprint where his teeth went into the inside of the chin bar, to give you some idea of the forces that are involved in these crashes. Now, the other thing I'm doing, I'll speak, if you can't hear me, let me know. But so there's a very easy comfort padding, and I want you to pull that back because I want you to look at the liner proper, which is, this part of the energy absorbing liner. And I want you to look at the crushing and the cracks on the inside. Once again, an illustration of what the helmet does. It absorbs the impact energy by crushing. We heard the story. The guy gets up and he's mad because the helmet broke. I do hear that quite often. This is how a certified helmet is supposed to work. And he is functioning. We had a great conversation with him. His neck is still a little sore. He's still getting physical therapy. But he's going to make a full and complete recovery because he was wearing a certified helmet. So this is our first success story. So I'm going to pass that around over here. And now our other one, which is this, our friend Chris, who gave a talk at the police training last week, he was riding and came around a curve, and it once again had been raining, but water had come down on the street, and unfortunately he didn't have time to brake effectively. The back end of his motorcycle slipped out. He fell down, started sliding on the road, and drilled into a retaining wall at probably 60 to 70 kilometers per hour. Once again, another facial impact with the front. This one, what I've done is I've taken the liner out, and we're going to be just handing around the liner because what I want you to look at is, do you see that deformation there? That's crushing of the energy absorbing liner. Okay? This also has foam in the chin bar. Should be around somewhere. There we go. Perfect. We'll hand that around with it. So this is another component. This is the expanded polystyrene. The force of the impact at the chin fractured all the EPS. Because once again, his jaw went into the chin bar, and we had to absorb that impact energy. So just take a look at these. I'll pass them around this way. This illustrates the crushing and how a helmet is actually supposed to work. How a certified helmet is supposed to work. Okay, because a little later in the training session, we're going to start looking at some uncertified helmets. And I want you to think about how the helmet would have functioned or had he been wearing an uncertified helmet. Because in both of those cases, I think the outcome would have been very different. Okay? Next slide, please. So I don't want to take anything away from our friends at BSJ because I had the great honor to work with them in developing the national standard. So I want to invite everybody to come to the event tomorrow as it gets kicked off. But we do need standards because we need to make sure that here in Jamaica we have a minimum level of protection for everybody that gets on the motorcycle. Next slide. One of the things that we're seeing even here in our mystery shopping, as Sidoni talked about, is we are seeing literally dumping of uncertified products into Jamaica. Nobody can stop them because they come in as either accessories or they come in mystery boxes. We talked to one vendor and we were told that they don't even come with boxes. All they come in is plastic bags because you can fit more in a container that way. Okay, and so we want to try and eliminate that. Next slide? No, or next click, yeah. Obviously, Jamaica is actually ahead of the game because we do have those 4 standards we talked about, because the standard now references those particular international standards, And now we have some legislation, and combine that with a standard, we can start to develop some effective programs to getting these counterfeit helmets off the market and maximizing helmet quality. Next slide. Obviously, that cannot be done alone, and that's part of the work that FIA Foundation and the Helmet Coalition do, is to increase awareness, because one of the problems is, yes, we have these reference standards, but how will our motorcycle riders know what they have to look for? And that's where the BSJ standard is going to come in and be incredibly effective, okay? So that's part of what we're doing. Next slide. This is, as I say, I had a great opportunity to work with April and her team, some very talented people at BSJ. They've put together a fantastic standard. It's going to be a great event tomorrow, and it handles all the needs we have for a helmet standard in this country. On the right-hand side, I'm not going to get into the details of the standard, but you can see that it allows different styles of helmets, because we have different riders. Some people like to wear open-face helmets. Some people like to wear full-face helmets. I'm starting to see a trend of modular helmets, as they're called, which they click up. And so that allows the people the opportunity to speak, but also offers the level of protection given by a full-face helmet. So next slide. Part of the thing that goes into a helmet, and if you're going to talk about helmets and talk about a certified helmet, I think it's very important that you know how to test a helmet, or what tests go into a helmet. And now there's lots of different tests. If you're a racing motorsport, obviously flammability is a big test. In some countries, hearing is a big issue, but all the helmet standards that we list in the BSJ standard have 6 fundamental elements that are important and that I want to convey to you today. Okay? They are area of coverage or area of protection, field of vision, strength of the retention system, meaning how strong is it, effectiveness of the retention system, which means how well does the geometry keep your helmet on your head, and obviously impact protection, as we're seeing in these examples, a critical element of the helmet performance. And lastly, but most importantly, what kind of warnings and labels are we providing on the product? We need to remember that these are people that buy helmets. We need to inform them. They should replace the helmet after it's been involved in a crash. They need information on how to clean helmets. You would be surprised at how bad Lysol reacts with EPS. It eats it up. So these are things that riders should know you shouldn't be doing when you're trying to clean your helmet. So that's all part of the labels and instructions. And when that's forgotten, we start to see helmet degradation and that sort of thing. So next slide. This is an illustration of the requirements for the areas of protection. Now, this is not going to be on the test, but you want to know that certain standards have different levels of coverage. The green line is the DOT line, or it's neon green up at the top. The yellow line at the bottom is ECE 22. So different standards have different levels of coverage, okay? But most importantly, they all provide coverage, critical area, which is obviously to protect your brain, okay? Now, you can see, next slide. That's the area of protection. One of the other things that the helmet standard has to be able to do is offer protection or give you the ability to see everything that's going on around you. In our helmet test world, we call that field of vision, okay? And you can see, as humans, we're standing here, you're looking at me. I want you to think about your peripheral vision. Each of us can see to about 105 degrees from our center line. That's called peripheral vision. You want to be able to see a car coming up on your left-hand side or your right-hand side, depending on where you are on the roadway. So the helmet has to be able to offer peripheral vision. Okay? Next slide. This is how we test it in the laboratory. I have a lovely little device, which what I do is I move it up towards the helmet, and if the helmet doesn't touch my little test device, then I know that it's offering over 105 degrees of peripheral vision. There are also tests for superior vision and inferior vision because, once again, we want the rider to be able to see a maximum amount of area. Okay, so that's another element of the helmet standards. Next slide. Third test, retention system strength. This is critical because what we're finding when we look at inexpensive or faulty helmets, we see very poor and cheap retention systems. Okay? So I'm going to go to one of my next candidates here. I'll reach over. Oh, look, you've given me all sorts of... I'll probably trip over this. But here is an example of an uncertified helmet. And all this has is a cheap plastic retention system. When the forces of a crash come into play, this is likely going to fail. So if we think about what's the next step, well, the next step is the helmet comes off your head, which you're now, unfortunately, back to the unhelmeted condition, right? Now, we've been distributing these helmets coming around. What I want you to do is think about weight. Think about the weight of that helmet when you had it in your hands. How heavy was that? Now what I want you to do is take this one and think about weight. Or lack thereof, right? It's like, it's non-existent. We go to this helmet here. Thank you, Sidoni. A little heavier, but also another uncertified helmet, okay? Another super light helmet because they don't have the integrity of a certified product. So when we test them on this retention system test rig, and what it is we have something that simulates my jaw, and then we raise a weight, 75 centimeters, and we release it. And what it does is it pulls down on the retention system, and if the retention system does not stretch too much, then it passes. Unfortunately, like that black helmet that's being circulated around, the retention system blows apart. And so that would fail the certification test. Next slide. The other test we do is called a helmet effectiveness or helmet stability or helmet roll-off, okay? And I call it helmet roll-off because it's the ability of the helmet to stay on your head in a crash. If you think about somebody who rides into the side of a vehicle, they're going to suddenly be stopped because when you sit about ride height, if you think about a rider in ride height, he's right at about the roof rail header. And what happens is riders tend to vault up slightly so your chest goes into the side of the car and your head whips forward. And if the retention system is poorly designed, it's just going to come off your head. Next slide. And you click on that if you can. And here's an example of a very poor retention system. You can sort of tell where this is going to go. And off it comes. So if I were in that crash we talked about, that helmet was off my head and now my bare head is about to hit the pavement. And we all know the terrible results of that type of an event. So we don't want that. Next slide. Whoop. You can go on one. Perfect. Next we get to the impact protection portion of our training session. What you're about to see is what is called a DOT certification test. The helmet is put on a test head form, which is fitted with what is called an accelerometer. It measures acceleration. And if you think about what is acceleration, Terry, well, what does your car do? You step on the gas, it accelerates. Acceleration is really just physically a change in velocity over time. In my business of biomechanics, we measure acceleration in terms of threats or tolerances. And to give you an idea of the continuum, we're all standing here. We measure acceleration in G units or gravitational units. So we stand here on Earth at 1 G. It keeps us all attached to the Earth. If we decide to go on an amusement park ride like a roller coaster, we will probably see maybe 3 or 4 Gs. Quite exciting. Some people actually black out on some roller coasters. If we think about getting into a Jamaican amateur boxer, he could probably punch you in the head at about 60 Gs. you'd be okay. You'd be a little wrung, but you'd still be okay. If you get to a professional Jamaican boxer, he will hit you at about 120 Gs. And you will probably be unconscious on the floor. You'll wake up. You'll have a concussion. But you'll be okay. Once you get above 150 Gs, 160 Gs, then we start seeing what I call permanent neurological deficits. You have permanent brain injury. You stop remembering things. You have difficulty forming words. You probably have very poor motor control, and you probably have very emotional responses to things. These are all fairly classic symptoms that we see medically of people that have sustained 150 to 200 to 250 Gs. Unfortunately, when you get up into the 300 to the 400 G range, that's where you start to see things like skull fractures, brain tissue coming out, and death. These are things that happen. So I want you to think about that in terms of this particular impact test. This is why we do these tests, to try and make sure that the helmet has what we call the right stuff. And remember the elements we talked about. We talked about a shell, we talked about a liner, and we talked about a retention system. So let's watch this first test here. And we test against a flat anvil, and we test against a hemispherical anvil, because what we want to try and do is simulate those risks that they're going to see out there in the real world, okay? So it goes up to about 2 meters. The target impact velocity is 6 meters per second. That's what we want to do. Now, when a helmet is uncertified, and that's what we're testing today, you're going to see what happens. Helmets are not designed to do that, okay, in a 6 meter per second impact. And what happens is, this test, for example, is actually not too bad, but if the rider were to sustain some kind of other secondary impact, so he hits the ground and then he slides into a curb, well, he now doesn't have that protection because the helmet is shattered and broke apart, right? So that's an indication of a very poor product. This next one is the hemispherical anvil. And remember, we talked about acceleration. We talked about G forces. And high Gs are bad. So let's take a look at this, and let's go over, once the computer shows us what the peak Gs are, let's see what happens. Once again, our helmet has literally fallen apart. And we go over to the computer and you look at, it's tough to see, but it's not difficult to see this spike, right? Those are high forces being transmitted to the skull and brain of the rider. That is not what we want to see in a protective helmet. But unfortunately, that is what happens in uncertified helmets, okay? So let's do the next slide, because I want to show up. Yeah, we'll pop it and go. So this is a European test. It's a different methodology, but the result is exactly the same. It is what is called a free motion head form system. So it's a free motion head, but it also measures the acceleration. So it accomplishes the exact same thing. They drop it from a much higher height, but let's go ahead and watch that test. And you can see that these are the type of tests we do when we want to certify a product. It rises up. In particular, this has an impact velocity of 7.5 meters per second. So it's a lot higher impact velocity than the DOT certification test. So the ECE helmets tend to be a little bit thicker when we look at them out in the field. But you can see we go up to the roof, and then we're going to release the helmet. Boom, catches. And once again, it's this triaxial measurement, and you're not allowed to exceed what is called 250 Gs. Don't worry, that's not going to be on the test at the end. But it's just designed to tell you it has to effectively absorb that impact energy. Okay? So we've looked at that helmet there, over there, and you've seen it. What I want you to do, and I apologize, but I hope you got a sense of the stiffness of the energy absorbing material when that white liner came around, the stiffness of that material. And you know, if somebody wants to come up and take a feel for it, you can tell it's a fairly stiff material. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab that blue helmet here, And actually, I'm going to do a couple of things. Let's start with the blue helmet. And everybody laughs at me because I take helmets apart all day. So I take helmets apart. They're really quite simple. But you just pull them out, and the liners pop out real simple. But now feel the density of this helmet liner relative to this helmet liner. Okay, I'm going to take this off so we don't lose it. But let's just pass these two around so you can feel the difference, okay? And then when I go to our friend, where's our black helmet around? Okay, let's take him out. Same thing. This is once again a helmet that is not DOT certified like a plane. But feel that liner relative to those full-face certified helmets that we were looking at. Thanks, Sidoni. I talk all over the place, right? So now the other thing we're going to do, this is another helmet that is not certified. But remember our two demonstration cases, our two success stories. They had similarities, didn't they? Both of those riders went in face first, and they had impacts both to their jaw, their teeth, and their forehead. Now let's look at this helmet, okay? Is it this one? Is that the one I pulled apart? No, I don't think that's... No, the other one's... Yeah, there's that one, but I wanted this one here. Because this one... Can you pull that? Yeah. Thanks, Sidoni. So this one is a DOT helmet, but what I want to use it for is I want to show you that not all helmets are the same. Those two helmets, both of those riders, were incredibly fortunate that their chin bar and other parts of the helmet were made with expanded polystyrene. Remember, I talked about at the beginning of this lecture, EPS is the wonder material. That's how we absorb impact energy. But let's take a look at this helmet. Let's peel this one apart. So now, oh, they can hear me. If I get this without getting myself all caught up on something, what have I done? Oh, it's stuck in the visor. There we go. But here we go. Here is the chin bar for this product. Anybody see any EPS? No. So, I've looked at a lot of accident cases, and while I'm not a medical doctor, I could probably guarantee both of those riders would have sustained massive mandibular and oral fractures. Because think of it, all that energy that went into the crushing and fracturing of those EPS, and you've seen it. You look and you can see it in the helmets. That would have gone right into their face. Okay? And particularly if they'd been wearing this helmet, it would have gone straight in. Okay? And when we look at the liner, okay, same thing. We pull these out. I should be able to pop this out fairly easily. Good. Once again, this is not bad. It's much better. It's a much stiffer liner, but it doesn't have chin bar protection. So if you have a friend of yours that's wearing a full face helmet, check it out and make sure it's got EPS in the chin bar. That's the sign of a good certified helmet. This is certified because one of the things that you need to know, okay, and it's a very subtle difference, but a DOT helmet, of which this is actually a certified DOT helmet, does not have a chin bar test. However, an ECE test does include a chin bar test, which is why you see EPS in both of those helmets that are out there. I see a bunch of my riding buddies back there checking their chin bars going, I got to check this out. You're busted back there, guys. Because that's the difference between DOT and ECE, okay? Just to give you some idea. So that's the test. Can we go to the next slide? So we talk about G's. There's an example of what happens when you test a DOT helmet. It was very funny because we were training the police, and their stock helmet is made by a company called Daytona, and that is in fact a Daytona helmet. And you can see, I use as an indicator about 25 to 30 millimeters of EPS as a guideline. you have here in Kingston a $10 coin. The diameter of a $10 coin happens to be about 25 millimeters. So as a test, all you have to do, take your coin and put it right there and find out, does this have enough material? Take a look at some of these liners that I'm seeing, the blue helmet that's going around, 10 millimeters, 15 millimeters tops. And just a very low density of helmet, right? Because it doesn't have enough stiffness, it doesn't have enough thickness, and it's not going to absorb enough energy for the impact, okay? When we go to a helmet that has no liner, if we could click on the next slide, it goes right up through the roof. In my laboratory, I actually have to stop testing because I'm going to damage my instrumentation. Because what happens is the energy gets completely dissipated by crushing of the liner, but then the liner can crush no more, so what happens is the accelerations go straight sky high. Now, I don't want to bring too much physics into all this, but I'm sure all of us somewhere in Google or on an ad, force equals mass times acceleration. So if you have a high acceleration for your head, that means you have a high force. And that's how brain injury occurs. These high forces are transmitted to your skull and brain, okay? So now, here's a helmet that we bought. Where did we buy this? Mandeville? I think. Sedona? I forget. But we bought this on our secret shopping thing. So this is, once again, it tries to pretend that it's DOT. It tries to fake you out. But just feel this helmet. Feel the weight of this helmet. Push your fingers into the liner at the back, and you'll see that this does not have enough. It does not have enough thickness, and it's a super soft liner when you compare it to this one. So I'm going to pass these around. There's this one, and feel that one. So feel them both and pass those around, because that's what's happening is these helmets pretend to be DOT, but they don't have enough of the right stuff. The EPS is not stiff enough to actually absorb that impact energy. And that's when you see this type of thing happen, okay? And if you think about the forces that went on in those two crashes we were talking about, energy gets absorbed through that expanded polystyrene liner. And that's how that material works, okay? So that's the key. Look at the material, squeeze the liner. If it feels really soft, then it is not certified. To get a certified helmet, you need at least 25 to 30 millimeters of expanded polystyrene, and it needs to have a sufficient stiffness that you should not be able to completely crush it with your fingers. And in all of those approved helmets that are circulating around, if you squeeze on those, you can see they have some good stiffness, as we call it, or density, when we talk physics and material properties. That's what we're talking about. So that's what happens when you have an uncertified product. Next slide. There we go. So what do we look for? Well, I'm passing around one helmet there. Look for the visuals. That black helmet there we know is not certified. Oh, look at that. I get to hold my own. Good. So it's not certified because it is very low profile. It has a super thin liner, a very poor retention system, and that's one first clue. The other clues, the very lightweight. That is a significant difference. Good helmets have incredibly good standoff, incredibly good designs. As I say, the unqualified helmets typically are under 500 grams. They weigh nothing. A good helmet like the two that saved our friends, those are excellent products weighing in well over a kilo, 1.2, 1.4. That's what you typically see. There you go. Sidoni's now putting helmets back together. Thanks, Sidoni. One of the first things to look for is a manufacturer label. Reputable manufacturers are proud to tell you their make and model. That's what you will find in all of the certified products we're looking at here. Bell helmets, Just coincidence, both of them were Bell helmets by two different riders. Uncertified helmets like this typically have no labels, little or no labels, and we're going to talk about fake DOT stickers in the back in just a moment. But basically, uncertified helmets don't typically have any labels. So that's one thing you want to try and look for. Now, there are numerous standards out in the world, as you'll learn tomorrow when you come to our kickoff for the standard. Jamaica typically uses 4 different standards: DOT, ECE, BSI, and JIS. But you may also see helmets coming in from India, which is the bottom left. Ooh, we got a little laser pointer. Woo, look at that. That's from India. That's from Australia. This is an indication of an ECE. The E with a circle is an ECE distribution. You can see here, this is what we find in the Philippines. Now, I don't know if we have some friends from BSJ here, but one of the things I'm hopeful that we get to in Jamaica is something like this little blue sticker here. This is a sticker that's put on by the Philippine Standard Board. And what it is, and their standard is very similar to the Jamaican standard in that they recognize DOT, they recognize ECE, but what they do is they work with the helmet importers and they get Philippine Bureau of Standards stickers so the consumers know to look for this particular sticker to indicate that this is a certified product that has been reviewed by BSJ and it's approved for sale to motorcycle riders in Jamaica. And it's an evidence of a certified product. Okay? Yes, we got a question in the back. Yeah. Hey. Sure, yeah. Please do. Here we go. Oh.
Committee, and I have oversight for motor vehicle import policy. Very interesting question that's been going through my mind. You speak about DOT not having the chin guard requirement, and then you say that ECE has the chin guard requirement. Given the importance of the chin guard, why are we even, is it that is there a time when it's sufficient to have DOT, or is it recommended to have DOT and ECE? And if so, why not just ECE?
Well, you could, it's a question of models that are being offered. So for example, some riders like open face helmets, they accept that there's not going to be the protection of the face. It's all a matter of offering products. If you feel here in Jamaica that we need helmets that have ECE level protection and we have chin bar protection, then yes, some countries adopt only ECE. The challenge becomes affordability of the products, because DOT helmets typically are slightly less expensive, but they do offer excellent protection. Just, you know, I worked in a study in LA, Los Angeles. 80% of all crashes that we saw in Los Angeles could be replicated with a DOT test. So we know 80% of the crashes that were occurring in Los Angeles, there were excellent protection from a DOT helmet. So these two cases, while very extreme, may be unique. One of the questions we don't know in Jamaica is, you know, how many riders go into retaining walls or how many just fall? Because if you think about a capsized crash, I'm just going to hit the side of my head, which is where it becomes very important, right? And both ECE and DOT offer that coverage and protection. So it's a combination of offering products, maximizing protection, and finding a series of products that riders will wear and accept. I love Jamaica because everybody loves full face helmets here. I work in Vietnam where it's the land of open face helmets. I think if I see one full face helmet in a day, it'll be a surprise. So Jamaica's already got that added level of protection. So to answer your question, I think my recommendation would be to try and develop enough data so you get a good understanding. To give you an example, for example, in the Dominican, a neighboring country, they accepted DOT with the exception that no half helmets are allowed. So they put a specific clause in their standard and said, yes, DOT certification is great, but it must be either open face or full face. We will not allow these half helmets. So they've taken that sort of step, and if the accident data suggests that, because in the Dominican, it was the Ministry of Health that actually gave that recommendation / requirement, because they were seeing lots of cases of, you know, trauma down below that could only be protected by an open face and full face. So it's a great question. I would work at, where's my friend Dr. Lucien Jones, who obviously tracks a lot of this stuff. Lucien, it would be great to get your hands on that kind of data. So I hope I answered your question. I went a lot longer than I thought.
No, you answered my question perfectly, because it raises the question of Jamaica has a high usage of motorcycles.
Yes.
Extremely high. Probably one of the highest for the region.
Yes.
And it is a means of affordable transportation, particularly in the rural areas. And then we have the programs where they're getting students to get the license so that they can go to school. So it's a real consideration, and I think it's important to balance what's affordable but also provides the amount of protection that's required, that's necessary to minimize deaths in particular. Also, I think it's important for us to also look at case studies in other parts of the world that are similar to us, have our similar issues, and to collect the data.
Yeah, I think one of the most tragic bits of data that I see in this country, and unfortunately we reinforced it. We went up to Junction and we sat in Junction for half an hour. We saw 16 riders go by. All 15 had no helmets. So we have a two-stage operation, right? Our first effort is we've got to get helmets on their heads. And then that whole question of, like you say, affordability, coverage, what I like is got to factor into it. And then we've got to work on our certification stuff. So we have many things we have to work on, but I think all of us in this room want every rider to wear a certified helmet on their head. And that's probably one of our biggest first challenges, I think. So one of the things on these helmets that are circulating around, okay, we'll return back to labeling. DOT, probably 5 or 10 years ago, realized that there's a lot of people selling fake stickers. That was even before Amazon came out and it was even easier to print stickers. So they have a requirement, and this is what I want you to try to remember. A true valid DOT sticker, and you can look in the back of there's this black one here. And sorry, Sidonia, I'm going to peel back this. But look on the back of those 2 Bell helmets as well. They include 4 elements. And I've got an example over here in the corner. You have to identify the manufacturer and the brand. You have to identify the model. You have to have the words DOT and FMVSS number 218 certified. So if we look at our examples, here's HJC, a well-known helmet maker. FG Jet, DOT. Icon, Airform, DOT, FMVSS certified. DOT R22. Sometimes you'll see this R22 add-on, because some manufacturers now, and I believe both of those Bell helmets at the back, have additional notification that it's R22. This one has the right stuff. But look at that red one that's right there. It doesn't have it, right? They try to pretend it's DOT. So that's a critical element, and I'm teaching you, that's how you tell between a fake DOT and a true DOT. Because when we go on to Amazon, we can buy DOT stickers all day, okay? That black little army, that little military-like helmet that's circulating around, it has a fake DOT sticker on it too. So you're going to see a pile of fake DOT stickers, but now that you've had this training, you will not fall for that. You will be able to recognize, you've got to look for the manufacturer, the model, DOT, and FMVSS. That's what tells you it's a true DOT certified helmet. Okay? So, and we see piles of them out here. We're going to see them all over the place. We see them, there's one here, it's got absolutely no stickers. Every certified helmet that's out there has some kind of label on it to indicate that it's certified. I'm going to go back one here, okay? One of the things that you'll also see perhaps is CCC. That means that it was certified in China. That's the Chinese designation of a certified product. Now, one of the things that you're going to learn about tomorrow, and one of the things that the Customs Bureau and everybody is looking at, is certifications from third parties. I don't want to get into that because today's lesson is about finding fake and real helmets. But you'll see there's a whole other operation of how we confirm that it's certified. And usually what we do is we have what is called a third-party independent test lab that does that certification for us, okay? So, other things to look for. Look at the quality of the retention systems. If they're using cheap plastic buckles, very cheap hardware, that's another good indicator that this product is likely not certified. Look at those two quality Bell products. Look at how robust those retention systems are. They are strong. I'm sure some of you guys have got some good certified products back there. Look at those buckles. And look at those liners. Remember, and weigh that helmet. So those are some of the things that you want to look for when you're trying to tell whether or not the helmet's been certified. The straps are usually at least 25 millimeters wide. They're usually either a slide buckle system or D-rings because they need to be strong enough to handle that retention system test I was telling you about. Okay? Now, I don't want to leave anybody hanging here, so there are some resources. In the United States, they've been trying to deal with fake helmets for a long time. So if you go in there and you type in this DOTHS, you'll see this PDF of how to identify unsafe helmets. Over here on the right side is a document that's worked on with the FIA Foundation and the Mexican Helmet Coalition on how to identify a real and a fake helmet. Okay, so there are some online resources to help you, but I think one of the best things today is you've seen what certified and uncertified helmets look like, okay? You can tell the difference when you pick them up in your hand, you look at the quality, you look for the thickness of the liner, and you feel the liner, how stiff it is. Can it absorb the energy of that 2-meter test drop that you saw? Ask yourself that question. Do you think it could handle that 2-meter drop? Okay? So those are all things about how to actually identify whether it's certified and uncertified. So the last thing I want to talk to you about, and it's actually going to be a couple of friends of mine I work at a motorsports shop in San Bernardino, California. We're going to talk about how to fit a helmet and how a helmet should properly fit. Because remember, I'm turning you all into helmet experts, so you're going to be helping friends identify real helmets and how to wear real helmets. So I'm going to let Carl and Bob talk here. Go ahead. We can click that and get going. Hopefully we can hear it. And there we go. Bring the volume up a little bit. Whoa. It's a dream shop to go to for a motorcycle guy. Trust me.
The difference between life and death when you really break it down to the nuts and bolts. Fit is the absolute most important element when choosing a motorcycle helmet.
I agree with that, Kyle. One thing,
but now we can't see it.
Very many times they ask, well, what's the best helmet for my head? Is it the most expensive helmet? Is it the least expensive helmet? My answer to them is it's the helmet that's the most comfortable on your head because fit is the most important thing.
So we got guys that walk in like, hey, I wear a baseball hat, which helmet should I get? It's really hard to tell. Number one, each of the manufacturers is different in the sizing and fit of the helmet. A lot has to do with head shape size, which we'll talk about in a minute. The other thing is a baseball hat is very flexible, whether it's a flex fit or whether it's a trucker style hat.
Any questions?
That fabric
Not yet? Okay, there's my screen.
Well, the baseball hat is the best way to find out what size you are.
helmet sizing situation, you want to go at the largest part of the head. So right around the back of the head and up to the forehead. So what I've got here is a measurement of about 55 centimeters. And that's going to be the base point that we're going to start with. Again, each manufacturer helmet, even though you have that 55 centimeter reading, is going to fit very
There we go. Good coffee break. All right, so I gotta see what my buddies are wearing back here. Oh, a modular. I like it. I'm going back by that. I'll get out of here. Okay. Now we're talking.
Kyle Bratcher from Chaparral Motorsports here. And today we're here in the helmet department where we literally have hundreds and hundreds of helmets on display. We're here with Bill today to talk about helmet sizing. Thanks for having us down here, Bill. Can you explain a little bit about your role here at Chaparral?
Yeah, I've been at Chaparral for 5 years now. I first came on board as a tire manager, and now I'm doing some other responsibilities, managing the helmet department, also doing purchasing in the street apparel department too as well, and it's a good operation. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Bill. This is a really important topic, a topic that literally could be the difference between life and death when you really break it down to the nuts and bolts. Fit is the absolute most important element when choosing a motorcycle helmet.
I agree with that, Kyle. One thing, a customer comes in the store very many times and he asks, well, what's the best helmet for my head? Is it the most expensive helmet? Is it the least expensive helmet? My answer to them is, it's the helmet that's the most comfortable on your head, because fit is the most important thing.
So we got guys that walk in like, hey, I wear a baseball hat, which helmet should I get? It's really hard to tell. Number one, each of the manufacturers is different in the sizing and fit of the helmet. A lot has to do with head shape size, which we'll talk about in a minute. The other thing is a baseball hat is very flexible. Whether it's a flex fit or whether it's a trucker style hat, that mesh and that fabric gives. That's something you don't get in a motorcycle helmet. While a baseball hat isn't the best way to find out what size you are, a plain old measuring tape absolutely is. So what we're going to want to do in any helmet sizing situation is you want to go at the largest part of the head. So right around the back of the head and up to the forehead. So what I've got here is a measurement of about 55 centimeters, and that's going to be the base point that we're going to start with. Again, each manufacturer of helmet, even though you have that 55 centimeter reading, is going to fit very differently.
That's why it's very important to try the helmet on to see how it fits your head. Measuring my head, you said it's 55 centimeters, correct? Which is truly about a medium or somewhere between a medium and a large. And some manufacturers, even though you compare one manufacturer's medium to another manufacturer's medium, they're going to vary from medium to medium and from large to large. So it's very important that you try them on and they fit you correctly as far as pressure points on the head and so on and so forth.
One of the biggest reasons that they fit differently is the actual shape of the interior of the helmet is different. Arai is really well known for their long oval. Shoei, traditionally, has been more of a round-shaped head. And then you have HJC and all of the other helmet manufacturers behind us. They typically go with that intermediate oval so they can fit a really broad spectrum of people.
One thing as far as fitment, Kyle, I was in the market for a helmet not so long ago, and I was trying on a Shoei RF1200 in a medium, which was kind of tight on my head because, like you said, it's more of a intermediate oval. Put a lot of pressure on my forehead. It's good to try on different shape sizes to see which one best fits your head.
I have always wanted to get into a Shoei helmet, or even a Shark helmet for that matter, and I just haven't been able to do it. With the Shoei helmet, by the time I get that helmet large enough to be able to fit my head front and back, I'm up to like an extra large. And in a properly fitting helmet, I'm usually a small to a medium.
Once you find a proper fitment on a helmet, you can actually fine-tune a helmet by adjusting the cheek pads. Sometimes people come in and try a helmet on, it fits them well on top of the head. However, the cheek pads make them feel like they're sucking their cheeks in. So you can adjust those cheek pads because they have 40 millimeters, 35 millimeters, 20 millimeters, so on and so forth. So you can adjust those to make it fit your cheeks correctly. But the more important part is fitting the crown of your head importantly too, but the cheek pads are more for comfort down the road because, again, like we talked about, if the helmet's not comfortable on your head, you're not going to be comfortable riding your bike and you can be frustrated, so it's good to get good fitment and fine-tuning that fitment for the helmet to fit your needs.
Absolutely. We're now going to show you exactly how different helmets fit and what to look for that proper fit. Super, super scary note here. I was at a helmet manufacturer several years back and walking to the facility, and they said, hey, here's a quick note. 70% of the motorcycle riders out on the road are wearing the wrong size helmet. Oh, whoa, 70%, how is that possible? And they said, when people go in and try helmets on, if it fits the way it probably should fit, it feels a little bit tight. But that's going to break in over the first couple rides. Now, they grab the next helmet and like, oh, this fits great. But after that couple rides, that helmet's going to break in and they're going to end up with a really sloppy helmet that is not the proper fit. So let's jump on over and take a look at some of these helmets and show people what a perfect fitting helmet looks like. So the first helmet that we're going to grab is an HJC helmet here. Bill's going to go ahead and put this on. We already know it's too large. It's definitely not the size of helmet that you would normally wear. But we just want to show you what a helmet that's too large looks like and kind of some of the things to take a look at. So the first thing is the side-to-side bobble. He could literally turn, like this is not going to protect you. So the key about a motorcycle helmet is when you hit the ground, you want a really snug fit already so that as soon as your head hits, it moves into that foam. And then what happens is that foam absorbs. What's going to happen here is he's going to have an initial impact, boom, of the helmet hitting his head, and then his head hitting the ground. Double impact is not good at all. So this is an example. And again, another comfort factor is when he's riding down the road and that wind is hitting him, this helmet's going to bobble all over the place and be super, super annoying. So let's go to a size down from this. Let's go to a large, and we'll show you what that looks like. So now we're going to grab the large helmet. This large helmet, although it's going to be closer to his helmet size, is not going to fit really, really well because it is a round-shaped internals versus the long oval that Bill typically wears. If you can zoom in and take a look, do you see the gap here on the side of his head? That is not good. So basically this helmet is round, his head is a long oval, and we have a lot of extra room here on the side that is basically wasted space. How's that helmet feel, Bill?
It feels snug around the head, but I can still tell it's a little bit loose on my head. If I go like this, you see how much slop there is in it? And same thing like that, it's just too loose.
So what's happening is he's getting pressure here at the front and the back, which would give him the proper fit that direction. But here it's too wide, which is causing the helmet to wiggle around quite a bit.
That's correct.
All right, now we're going to jump into a medium showy helmet. So again, this is the wrong head shape for Bill, but that larger helmet was too big and we saw some fitment issues with it. So now we're going to put this helmet on. And what are you feeling now, Bill?
I feel tight in the cheeks. I feel a little pressure on the forehead. Other than that, it fits snugly around the sides. So
okay,
it's just tight in the front, but not too much in the back, and the cheeks are kind of tight too.
So by the time he gets the helmet to be able to fit correctly, snug enough, it's just too snug in a lot of very important places.
I can feel it's not going to be comfortable down the road, even once it breaks in too. So.
All right, so now we're going to jump into his proper helmet shape, and that's going to be this Arai Quantum X. All right, now we're going to jump to a helmet that's traditionally Bill's helmet or head shape. And we're going to take a look and see. So once you find the right shape of helmet for your head, you're going to start to fine tune and tweak it and kind of see what's the best fit for you. So one of the things we like to do is we take a look and see, is your chin hanging out the bottom? We put our hands over our ears and kind of move our head side to side. And that's really going to let you know how much wiggle room, per se, you have inside the helmet. How's this one feeling for you, Bill?
This one feels nice and comfortable. Feels good. I don't feel very many pressure points on it. It feels good. Feels like a good fit.
I don't know if you can see it in the camera or not, but as you can see, he's got a nice close fitment here. The cheeks are fitting him well. They're a little bit tight right now, but after for a couple rides, this helmet is going to be fitting perfectly.
You can see there's not much movement with the helmet. It fits my head pretty snugly. I've been riding for a long time, so I know helmets do break in after a while. So you want it to be as snug as you can stand it when it's brand new, because you got to keep in mind, like you mentioned before, Kyle, a lot of people are riding around with a helmet 1 or 2 sizes too big for them because we're in the store trying it on. They opt to go to large instead of medium because it was more comfortable at that time. However, once it broke in, it was too sloppy for them. So I can tell that this helmet, when it breaks in, will be good for me.
Now I've got over 500,000 miles on 2 wheels, and I wear a helmet every day and put about 100 miles a day on each specific helmet that I wear. Now, one thing I've noticed, huge tip for those of you that commute and put lots of miles on your bikes. About once a year, I'll completely swap out the entire innards of the helmet. A new liner on the inside, new cheek pads, and it literally feels as if I just purchased a brand new helmet. So the outside might be a little bit scuffed up from, you know, knocking it around over the year, but I now have a perfectly fitting helmet on the inside that smells like a new helmet too, and that's key. Part of good helmet care is taking care of your helmet and making sure it's clean. Motorex has a really amazing helmet care product that you spray in and then wipe out, antibacterial. Definitely a cool product for anybody owning a motorcycle helmet. Well, that was a fun little demonstration. Bill, why do you believe that Arai helmet fits you best?
Well, over my many years of riding, I just tried on different helmets, purchased different helmets, used different helmets, and it seems that the Arai, because my head is a long oval or intermediate oval, depending, you know, on the helmet, Arai fit my head the best and was most comfortable for me once it broke in. Like I said before, when I tried other helmets in a medium, they were too tight on my head. A large was too sloppy on my head. But when I put a medium Arai helmet on, because of the oval shape, it fit my head a lot better, and it was a lot more comfortable and also a lot safer in case an accident did happen. So,
So fun.
In fact, just one other thing, I did have an accident with my Arai helmet back in May of this year when I hit my head pretty hard and the helmet was all scuffed up. I'm happy I had a full face helmet on because I hit the back of my head, but I also rolled around and hit the front of the chin bar too, so the chin bar was all scraped up as well. And God forbid, if I had an open face helmet on,
Maybe bad.
who knows what my chin would look like today. So
I gotta say the same thing. The 3 accidents I've been on the road, the back corner of the helmet and then the chin bar on every single one of those accidents have been scuffed up. So full face helmet for me is the way to go.
Other than that, thank you very much, Kyle. Thank you for participating and safe riding out there. I'd like to thank you for sharing your time with us at Chaparral Motorsports Helmet Department. As you can see, we have thousands of helmets in stock. If you're in need of a helmet, please stop by.
Yeah, if you get to San Bernardino, California, it's a great shop. So just emphasizing the importance of trying on different manufacturers, getting a helmet shape that fits your head, and that it's not super loose because it's going to vibrate all over the place. So that's just some guidance on how to find the right particular helmet size. So to finish off, I think I have one slide left, but that's okay if you don't get to it. So some of the things that we talked about today to look for and to tell the difference between a certified and an uncertified helmet. Obviously, the first thing is to look for a certification sticker. Question? Or are you good? You want to let me roll? Is that, okay. We'll have a ton of time for questions. So first thing, look for that certification sticker. Second, look at the liner thickness. Does it have 25 to 30 millimeters? Okay. Thirdly, do your own test. Lift the helmet up. Take a look at it. This helmet here, for example, okay? The weight of this helmet. This actually has a liner in it. So what you do, just flex this thing around. It's flimsy. It's got no stickers in the back. You know this isn't certified, okay? Those are some of the things. Lastly, look at the retention system. This is a cheap buckle system that's going to fracture and break. It's not going to provide protection. The helmet's going to come off the head. Okay? So these are
some Chaparral Motors.
There we go. So there you go. So yeah, so these are some of the things that we remember when we're trying to identify certified and uncertified helmets. So this gets to my request to all of you, okay? And one of the things I love about this country is the community that we have. We are a community. We take care of each other. So I'm going to give you all a homework assignment. I want each of you to find 2 friends that ride motorcycles. And I want you to take what you've learned today and go look at their helmet. Or let's go up another step. If they're not wearing a helmet, let's convince them of the need to wear a helmet. Tell them what kind of helmet they should be buying, what they should be looking for. But if they have a helmet, I want you to look at it and go through all those tests that we just talked about. And if it is not a certified product, I want you to talk to them about the importance of wearing a certified product. One of the things that I do as an accident investigator is have to deal with the reality of a crash and a death. Nobody gets up in the morning knowing they're going to die. Nobody gets on that bike expecting to ride and not come home, okay? So nobody expects to be in a crash. So why not get a certified motorcycle helmet to maximize your ability to protect yourself. We have seat belts in our cars and we wear them. Let's make sure everybody wears a certified motorcycle helmet. I hope I've been able to provide you with some information that now I want you to broadcast out to everybody, because you are now a helmet expert, okay? Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, guys. Thanks. No, I'm not answering. Sure, go ahead.
All right. Morning, everyone. So my name is Marlon Fletcher, president of the Jamaica Motorcyclists Association and the community engagement lead for the National Helmet Wearing Coalition. Now, you spoke about the weight of the helmet, all right, with the invention and technology that is upon us today. What are your thoughts on the helmets that are made of carbon fiber? Because in Jamaica, most sport bike riders opt for the carbon fiber helmets because it's super light.
Yes.
But I didn't hear you say anything about its safety or lack thereof. So do you have any thoughts on the carbon fiber helmets?
Oh, I love carbon fiber helmets because they are super lightweight, super stiff. They do, remember we talked about the role of the helmet. It distributes the forces around. Carbon fiber is a wonderful material that does that. The downside to carbon fiber, do you have a carbon fiber or you have friends? Just out of curiosity, Marlon, how much did you pay for your carbon fiber helmet? Ballpark. Lots, right? $1,500. Exactly. So about 15. They run between anywhere between $900 US to $1,800. So there we go. We're down to $850. Okay, they're getting better, right? But they're sport bike riders. I love sport bike riders because I don't really need to talk safety about those guys. They know the importance of PPE. Most of them have leathers. They'll buy all their gear, buy the really nice Arise and Shoeies and the boots and everything. So I love the sport riding clubs and the track days and all that kind of stuff. Our mission, I think, within the coalition is to find that affordability. We were just talking about that intersection of affordability and protection. Sidoni made a great point in that there's a nasty little secret, okay, is if I take your $1,500 carbon fiber helmet and I put it on my test rig and I do that 6-foot drop, I can find a $20 helmet that will give those same Gs, because it's not proportional to price. It's proportional to technology. To give you an idea, okay, all of these helmets have one, maybe two, a couple of them bells I think have EPS chin pieces and chin bars. So let's say they have 3 pieces of EPS, maybe 4, okay? If you were to buy a Schubert helmet made in Germany, okay, it has 14 pieces of EPS. That's how much engineering goes into those products, but you pay that price. That's another $1,000 helmet, right? So we want to try and find that balance. People that can afford those beautiful helmets will buy those. I love carbon fiber helmets. Arai makes some spectacular carbon fiber products. Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Basically, so if the ITA were looking at the same weighting for comparison between a carbon fiber and a other helmet, is there a significant weight disparity? Because you mentioned it's much lighter. So just for us if we're going to be looking at a helmet now, what am I looking at? So if I realize it's carbon fiber,
right,
am I looking at that same 1.2 or how much less?
They can get down to 800, 900. They're still going to be in the kilo range, because while I can get a really nice carbon fiber shell, I still have to get that EPS, and that's a dense EPS. So you're going to still see it, but once you start seeing carbon fiber, you know you're in another class of helmet. You're up there, and the price tag will obviously reflect that. Most of the helmets we see here in Jamaica are manufactured from a material called ABS. This is an ABS material. It's a simple injection molded type of material. Or you might see fiberglass. But if you look at something like all of these are all ABS. And one of the things you can do is if you can just very carefully, the cheek pads, remember, are usually soft materials. If you peel back the cheek pad, you'll usually be able to see the inside of the plastic, and that'll tell you you've got an ABS shell. Then once you've got ABS, all of those weight classes kick in. The 1.2 to 1.4, you know, you weighed that Bell helmet versus that red helmet that's right there. It's really quite obvious when you start weighing those things. And that's largely a function of that low density expanded polystyrene. And also, if we look at it, we look at this guy here, they're making this shell as thin as they can. So the thickness of this shell, and this is a DOT helmet here, just take a look at the stiffness and difference. Like if I try and do the same test, right? So this doesn't have the liner, so it's going to be a little flexy, but it's got a nice stiff shell. This has got the liner in it, and just look, it's just this, it bows really quickly, you see? So it's really, and just the weight of this compared to some of those guys, the helmets those guys got, all those helmets, it's really easy to tell. Okay? Yeah. Yes.
Hi again. In the video, it mentioned regular usage. You should consider replacing your liner once a year. I think as it stands, the Jamaica standards doesn't have that requirement. Is that something that should be incorporated into the legislation, or is that down to personal preference?
That really gets down to personal preference. And this is what he's talking about. You can buy these pad kits for the most manufacturers and you just replace them. What happens is over time this becomes a powder. So it really gets down to personal preference and how the helmet is cared for. You could put it as a recommendation. One of the challenges, and we faced this on the standards committee, is you don't want to put a whole pile of unique requirements because then nobody's going to make a helmet that complies, right?
Right.
We want to try and maximize availability on the market. So one of the things that most manufacturers, and this gets into the instructions, most of them do provide some guidance on when it should be replaced, and you know, when you're involved in a crash, you get rid of the crash. Most manufacturers verbally will tell you replace the helmet after about 5 years, but Shoei, I think, is the only manufacturer which actually used to put expiration dates on their helmets. So, but as a guideline, if you're talking to people and friends that have bikes and ride, suggest about every 5 years because that's when this wears out. So, yeah.
I'm in agreement with you. I'm not a proponent of onerous,
Sure.
overbearing regulations, but I think it's something that can be put out there for consideration, best practices, and so on, especially to ensure that you're keeping with the manufacturer's guidelines and so on, because it varies for
Yeah, I think what I look forward to is as this standard gets introduced and as we start to monitor the situation, we're going to start to see what certifications we sell more of. Do more DOTs come in? Do more ECEs come in? And then that gives us some guidance as we go ahead. And maybe we start, you know, I think in reality, very few helmets meet the BSI standard now, because if you think about historically, the Brits joined the EU, so therefore they recognize the ECE standard, and almost every manufacturer that sells a product in the UK also meets ECE. So I'd be very surprised if you see a BSI only helmet. Most of them now just meet BSI and ECE. Similarly in Japan, you're seeing Japan and ECE helmets, and DOT and ECE. You see these Bell helmets meet both. Many manufacturers are now recognizing the merits of building helmets that meet more than one standard, because now they can sell it in more than one place. So that's what they do. Yeah, Paul.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Terry.
We'll get a microphone for you so everybody can hear you. Thanks. Whoop. There you go.
Thank you. Really appreciate your presentation. A lot of useful information. And at the council, we've been associated with this thing from 1999, when we worked with the Ministry of Transport, it was then, and Works, on putting together the, amending the law for the use of safety devices, including helmets. But I can tell you, I feel a lot more qualified now in terms of, you know, how you've broken down the information on even the innards of the helmet and that sort of thing. So thank you so much for that. But to follow up on the question that was just made about the information as to when to change inside, I think that has to be part of the public education.
Mm-hmm.
And as well, another very important point for public education is for persons to know that when they're in a crash, that really, even if they don't see anything physically wrong with the helmet, as long as it has endured impact, that it really ought to be checked and replaced.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. No, I agree completely, because Bell helmets used to have a marketing program which I loved, which was called, if you have a $10 helmet, or if you have a $10 head, wear a $10 helmet. You know, and that's in line with that. When you have a crash, what is your head worth? And are you willing to go back and, you know, risk having a helmet that could actually not protect you? So is it worth it to you, given that you've been in a crash? So you want to try and promote them to make sure that they buy themselves a new helmet. So, yeah.
Thank you, Terry, for a very interesting and engaging presentation. I've learned a lot. I had to step out for a short time, so I don't know if this question was asked. Earlier in your presentation, you mentioned that the way some cleaners work, it breaks down the usefulness and the strength of the helmet. How do you recommend that helmets are cleaned, and what solutions do you use?
So one of the beauties of all of those 4 standards is, one of the requirements is that you have to inform the user of suitable cleaners. It's written right there as a requirement. Now, almost to a note, 100% of them say mild soap and water as the cleaner. No solvent-based materials. We've had people spray Lysol. Can you buy Lysol here, the disinfectant? The disinfectant has some solvents in it, and it eats away at the EPS. So that guidance is actually a requirement, and that's one of the things, you know, it's one of the things you don't think about a lot, but in all of these non-certified helmets, there's absolutely no instructions. Like Paula said, you know, replace the helmet after it's been involved in a crash. That's a DOT requirement. And use only mild soap and water to clean the products. Those are right there on those labels. If those guys pull those helmets back there, you can peel that label up and see it right there. So that's the beauty of this new BSJ standard we're going to have tomorrow. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Not a question, but I also appreciated the detail you took to explain how important fitting the helmet is. Yeah. Because in a crash, when you have those forces bouncing your head about, and you know, it would presumably add to the level of injury faced by the.
Oh, exactly. Like you saw those traces, you know, of the accelerations, and I can tell you in my laboratory when I have an unsized, improperly sized head form relative to the helmet, I see a camel. I see a big peak. It drops down, and then I see a second big peak, and anytime those forces get high is not bad. So you're exactly right. That's why we test that. Yeah, in the back there. Here we go.
Still morning. Good morning again. Thank you, Terry. My interest in motorcycle helmets came out of working on looking at solutions for students who take motorcycles to school, especially in the rural and western parts of Jamaica. And we had a hard time trying to find standards that spoke to youth helmets. And so I still am wondering, does the new standard speak to this in any way? And do you have any guidance or suggestions as to how we go about selecting and fitting for youth wearers?
Well, there's a couple of challenges there. The 4 standards that we have, I regret to say, they don't address youth or small children. For example, in other parts of the world that Aggie and I work at, it's quite regular to see children go to school on the back of a motorcycle. Probably in rural areas of Jamaica, we have the same thing. So I actually wrote a standard that tried to address the impact needs of children, and it's called GCHS. It's a publicly available standard. That's the first step. The second step is finding products that actually, which is your challenge, right, is finding products that meet it. Fortunately, there are some manufacturers. I know Bell makes some very small ones. I think now in the days of Amazon, you're going to have to try and use the internet to try and get some of those products in. The downside to that, and this was where I was fairly critical, is children have unique impact protection needs when you compare them to adults. So you have to have a different sort of specification, and that's why I wrote that standard. But that's the first part of it. The second part of it is getting products that are available. I think you can find some small DOT helmets. You can order them on Amazon, make sure they're DOT certified, and they'd obviously get drop shipped into Jamaica. So there are some out there. I know some manufacturers. HJC makes some very good quality products. Bell, LS2 is another manufacturer, because they sell products through Southeast Asia. There are no school buses, as I'm sure here, right? So you're part of a universal challenge we have. So yeah, please keep in touch, because if there's anything we can do to help that, we're more than happy to. Yeah. Good question. Yes.
Following on that, without too much detail, what are some of those unique needs that children would have? It just seems like you get a smaller helmet for a smaller person.
Well, that's my advanced class, so I don't know if you can take that, okay? So, if you think about it, a child's skull up until they're about 16 or 17 years of age is growing and developing. So it is soft and pliable, okay? And if we think about being an engineer that I am, I have to simplify things. So it's got some stiffness, so we simulate that with a spring. It's got the ability to absorb some energy, so we simulate that with a damper. And it has some mass, okay? So we have, I wish I could draw, but so we have a simple spring mass system. And then when we add a helmet to that, this has also got some stiffness, so it's a spring. It's also got some damping, so it's a damper, and it's also got some mass. So imagine, if you will, a mass, spring, and damper, which is the child's skull and brain, and a helmet, which is a mass, spring, and damper, which is the helmet. If you put two springs in a row and squish them like this, what's going to squish first? The softest spring, right? So the problem is an adult motorcycle helmet is stiff. The child's skull, not so stiff. So what ends up, we talked about energy absorption. We see it in those crashes. In that case, what's going to absorb the energy? Child's skull, right? So that's not good engineering. So what we want to do is we want to make that helmet super soft, softer than that other spring, so that that's what absorbs the energy. And if you look at, and we were talking before this seminar, the bicycle industry is way ahead of us when compared to motorcycles, because in North America and Europe, children have been on the back of bicycles forever. So you can buy child bicycle helmets, and if you look at them, they are super soft. So super soft and thick works really well for kids. Not so much for adults, but really well for kids. And that's why you have to take care of them. And there's been now some, because we have now finite element models and some real high-powered computers, we found that children have a much higher susceptibility to skull fracture. Because of this soft skull, they are much more susceptible to skull fracture, which is a terrible situation when you've fallen off a motorcycle. So that's sort of my pitch on the child. Like I say, that's the advanced class. We'll be done in 2 weeks, so I'll be back. Okay, guys? Yeah, okay. Finite element modeling 101. Yeah, so good question, though. I love it. So you all ready to go out and find two friends that have motorcycles and talk to them about what helmet they wear? Good. Paul, you have to do 4 because you know more people. All right? Well, thanks again, everybody. I'll pass it back to Sidoni. Yes?